All right. Welcome back, everybody, to Surviving Hollywood Podcast. I'm Austin.
Hey, welcome back, Austin. I'm Aaron.
Hey, Austin and Aaron. I'm Johnny.
All right. Guys, we just had a great episode. Director, network TV, movie director, Chris Grismer. What do you guys think?
I really liked this guy's energy. So you knew him from that show you worked on with him, Deputy. This is the first time I met him. And he seems like he'd be a solid director to work with on set. You can tell he's just smart with it, chill.
I thought he's kind of got the energy, like a dad type energy, meaning cool, calm, and collected. Dude knows his stuff. Hey, but you guys watch the episode and let me know. But yeah, I met him on Deputy. Great experience. Now, Deputy on Fox didn't get picked up for season 2. Was not because of the directing. I'll tell you that. But Chris walks us through what it's like to direct network TV shows, how to get jobs as a director on network TV shows.
Yeah, he's a totally cool dude. Definitely a film guy. He said he grew up, working in a video store in Canada. And that's how he got into movies and stuff. So always love to hear that kind of thing. And he talks a little bit about how he went to film school, was making shorts, ended up making a feature that got into Toronto Film Festival. And that's kind of when his career sort of took off. So I thought that was really cool for him to kind of share that. And for all your directors out there, it's a great way to show you that there are many avenues to getting to TV.
And also, he has a lot of producing and executive producing experience. So we talked to him about that. He had some insightful stories.
And question for you, Johnny. He talked about shadowing if you want to become a director, and you're trying to get into directing.
Well, I was planning on emailing him after this podcast.
Oh, that's great, dude. Hopefully he watches.
Or, he doesn't respond. Hey, he said that too. We talked about that also.
For me, but exactly.
What are you going to say, Johnny? Give us the little...
Hey, Chris. I don't know if you remember me. We just spoke 3 minutes ago on the podcast. Wondering if there's any way I can come follow you, man. Stalk you? No, that's too much.
Okay.
All right. We'll workshop it. But Aaron, you want to take us in?
All right, guys. Enjoy the episode with Chris. He's the man. Follow him on his Instagram. And look forward to the second half of the episode when he starts getting into some of the movies that he just recently watched and that inspires him. And surprisingly, it was the guest we had on just in the past week, Anna Hutchison, like the Cabin in the Woods. And let's do it.
So Chris, you listen to many podcasts?
I do. I listen to, my go-to podcasts are like the true crime ones and, Radio Lab and The Moth.
Radio Lab.
Stuff like that. I like, what's the one? Spooked a lot too.
That's true crime?
No, Spooked is it's terrifying. It's literally it's a New York podcast and they just interview people and they tell creepy things that have happened to them for real. And it's absolutely
also true stories.
True stories told by the people that it happened to. And it's literally, my son and I listen to it and then he sleeps with the lights on.
Is there any certain one that really stuck out to you?
There's one about this kid. He's a Mexican American, and his family would get back to Mexico every summer to his dad's sort of birthplace in the middle of this town, and they would have this huge festival that took over the whole town, and the kids were down there playing, and a truck lost control of its brakes and drove into it came down the hill, smashed into a clown car that was part of it.
What?
One of the clowns with a broken neck landed sort of in front of him and his brother and sister, and they thought it was part of the act, so they were laughing at the clown as it was dying.
Oh my God!
Appeared to them that night, at the house. He was sitting in the kitchen trying to get into their room, and they all swear it. The whole family is this happened to us.
That's crazy. That would be the most random thing, a clown car. That's so weird.
If that happened on a TV show, I would not believe it.
No, I know.
Where do you fall on the Joe Rogan, Mark Maron scale? Chris?
I like Mark Maron. Joe Rogan is like, what did somebody say recently? It's the idea that just because you have an opinion doesn't mean you should express it, you know, or I'm not a big fan of his. I feel like it's just this side of Fox News sometimes.
I like if he has a good guest, like those Elon Musk
Yeah.
episodes, I will watch those all the time. But
I'm a big fan. I don't know. I think he's progressive. Like, I don't think he's that close to Fox News.
Sometimes, I don't know. Elon Musk, though, is Lex Luthor for sure, right? He's
Yeah,
clearly
totally.
a good guy.
Totally. Yeah, I like Maron. I don't know if you listened to the one we had with Seinfeld recently,
No,
but it was interesting because he did like a Zoom call because, you know, obviously they can't meet up. And it felt like the whole time, like Seinfeld didn't want to be there.
I think he probably didn't want to be there.
Yeah, it was just weird. He's like, I've been trying to get this guy for years. Last time I asked him to do my podcast, he was like, why?
Yeah.
It's just so funny.
Well, that's the fun part about Seinfeld interviews. They're always like biting. Like Seinfeld's always like kind of mean.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
that whole
great.
comedians and cars thing, he's pretty mean in that, too.
Anyway, Chris, let's cut the shit.
Okay.
Are birds real or are birds not real?
No. Have you ever seen a baby bird?
I think so.
They're robots. They're drones. No, there's this guy who does that's what I forgot I was reading. There's a guy who has a website. It's sort of about conspiracy theories, and it's sort of a deconstruction of conspiracy theories. So his whole thing is birds aren't real. And I saw a poster for it in Silver Lake once, and he's like, birds aren't real. Come and join this meeting or whatever. And I went to the website. It's merch and stuff, so I had to.
You went to a meeting. I mean, I've heard that conspiracy theory, so it's like getting kind of mainstream now.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like a great shirt to wear at a protest. You know what I mean? Just out there, just rallying.
Just completely randomize the protest, absolutely.
All right. I mean, we usually just like to fade right in to like the industry talk of this thing, but you've directed a ton of stuff. Designated Survivor, Deputy, obviously. We'll get into like all the stuff or some of them, but I know you're originally from Canada.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you first get into directing?
I guess it was photography first when I was a little kid, and I just started, taking pictures. Then I worked at a video store, and that's in the late 80s, and that's when I really wanted to, start making horror movies and things like that. My friends and I would dream about that. So I applied to film school, and I didn't get into the first one that I applied to. So I almost got a degree in philosophy and theology while I was trying to get into film school. Finally got into a film school, and went from there to do my master's in directing at the Canadian Film Centre, which is Norman Jewison runs, and they take like 8 people a year, and you just direct for 6 months, and then they pick one person to make a feature. And I got the feature, so I made a feature through them. And meanwhile, I was a crew member. I was a grip for a long time, and then I worked in camera and electric and everything. So while I was directing my first feature, I was also on the weekends gripping on American features.
Wow.
When you were working on that, or when they gave you that feature, like you wanted it essentially, was that fully funded by the school? And were you ever like at all feeling like, oh, this is kind of daunting? I've done shorts, but now a feature is a whole different game.
It wasn't that. I mean, it was daunting in that it was fully funded to $330,000 Canadian. So it was, it was 2 days of shooting on an American movie or whatever, American TV series. But it was daunting because I wrote and directed it, and there were so many cooks and government agencies, and everyone had an opinion, and it was hard. It sold to HBO, Cinemax or something, and it did the Toronto Film Festival, bunch of film festival circuits. It served its purpose, and it got me my first TV gig on Queer as Folk, really my first American TV gig. And for some reason, the Canadian series, there was only a couple that wanted me to work, that would allow me to work on them, because Canada kind of has this hierarchy of, it'll be your time at some point, but right now it's not, and you don't have enough experience to work on Degrassi or whatever is what I was told. So I luckily for me, I didn't have enough experience to work on Degrassi, so instead I was directing American shows. So the obvious choice was then to move to LA to continue directing American shows. So I moved here and got my green card, and now I'm on my way to getting my citizenship. So
Nice.
What was it that film festival process for you like? I mean, Toronto Film Festival is pretty well known. were you like really happy with how the film turned out? Like, were you able to make a lot of connections to that film festival?
I was able to make a lot of connections through it. I wasn't that happy with how it turned. I mean, it's really a bizarre film. It's called Clutch, and it's maybe in a discount bin in Amoeba right now for a minute or something. But it was like very art house. It was like I was so happy that Filmmaker magazine called it a Hal Hartley-esque ripoff with a lot of heart, and I was like, yes, they get it. They called him Hal Hartley ripoff was like a big compliment to me. So, that it served its purpose. And then, I kind of got into television. I saw that, I had written another feature, and it had Marcia Gay Harden, Jon Favreau, Macaulay Culkin, and Sarah Polley were all sort of loosely attached to it. And then that some of the funding fell apart. And in Canada, all the funding is tier-based. So if you lose some here, you'll lose a bunch here. And the thing, it just fell apart like a house of cards. And I didn't have anything else. I was like, what do I do? So it was television seemed like the logical choice.
And when did you first get representation? Was that not till LA, or did you have that in Canada?
No, I came down. I used to come down to LA a lot while I was living in Canada, and just spent like a month here or so, just like writing and hanging out and taking meetings that never amounted to much. But I got representation on one of those at Paradigm. Bill Douglas was at William Morris at the time, and so I met with him, and he took me on, and then he moved over to Paradigm, and I was the head of TV there. So I've kind of been with him since 15 years, 20 years almost.
Mm. Wow.
Was it easy? Because I feel like that's a huge sort of step that most people struggle with.
I don't know. It seemed easier for me because I did direct a lot of music videos. So I think that, TV directors in particular all kind of have the same resume and the same reel. And so I had a couple things. I had my photography because I'm like a photographer. I've had like gallery shows and stuff. And then I did a lot of music videos. And so I had two little other pieces that could be thrown out as style things. A lot of people with TV directors, like I know when I'm hiring television directors, I don't know what's their style, and I don't know what is the show's showrunner and directing producer style. So it's hard to tell, hard to set yourself apart. So I was lucky that I had those two things. So he used those. He saw he could sell me, I think.
You kind of mentioned something just a second ago that you took a lot of meetings, and it kind of nothing really happened. I had read an article that the Duplass brothers said they won't do any more general meetings anymore because they just was like a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
Did you find what would you kind of find at these meetings was the purpose essentially that, hey, we might work together, but it doesn't happen? Or
I can't remember his name, but he was the head of Paramount. And part of my deal with doing my first feature with Paramount, paid for some of it, like $50,000, and part of it was to go and have a general meeting with him. And so I had a general meeting, and it sort of captured what general meetings are like. And he just told me stories of how he worked his way up from being he was actually an usher in a Paramount theater. And the Paramount Theater in Toronto had like the railing from his first theater that he worked at, he had it installed there. So that my whole general meeting was just hearing stories about, and it was great. And it was really interesting, but it was like, it went absolutely nowhere. I suppose if I was really good, I've never been that great at selling in the room, like just off the cuff. Like I have friends who can just all of a sudden they feel the room and they're like, come up with an idea for a movie and they'll pitch it and they end up getting money for it. Like, I don't know how much that happens anymore, but I had couple friends who've done that in the past. I've just never been that guy. So
did you ever have to or choose to shadow like directors that are already working on a TV show?
I had to shadow on my first, I did a Canadian series, like a legal series called The Associates, and I had to shadow George Bloomfield, I was in heaven because he's one of my favorite. He directed 80 episodes of SCTV. He's the one who he came in and he created the films for SCTV. Like it was his idea to make the film parodies. And so I brought my SCTV history book and had him signing it and stuff. So, and I just shadowed him and he would just go, what do you think we should do here? And I'd say, and then he'd go, all right, let's do that.
Wow.
So,
really?
Yeah. So it was actually a pretty great experience.
That is really awesome, actually. Especially what are some of your influences, you say? Cause I know you kind of mentioned like with the agency, like you had music videos and other things to show. What do you feel like sets apart your style a little bit?
I think I'm pretty concerned with how the frame looks and how the actual image looks. And I really am involved in setting looks and then I was an actor. Like I come from 200 years of Irish actors in my family. Okay. And I was an actor in college and stuff. I was part of a theater troupe. And I think those two things, like, I think speaking, I mean, Austin can tell you if I was I don't know if I spoke too much when you were in that room. I was nervous.
Oh, my experience was you gave limited notes. You really just like let the actor do what they were hired to do.
Yeah.
Which I like.
Yeah. Well, you guys were great in those scenes. So, I think that sets me apart, being concerned with the look, and as a photographer approaching it with a more cinematic style. I know that when I hire TV directors, a lot of the time they don't give notes to the actors, and they don't give notes to the cinematographer. And I'm just kind of like, why are you here? Like, you're not telling them how to set the shots up, what you want, how you want to tell the story. We could kind of just do this without a director. So I try to look for people when I'm hiring as a producer, people who have an opinion, people like, I'm hiring you for your style, for your opinion, so you can run the ship. So.
And
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, for Deputy, I know you like executive produced other shows that you directed on, but for Deputy, you got hired by David Ayer's company, correct?
Yeah, I did.
So you had to fit his specific style, which was very cinematic.
Yeah, we got to fit his style and then actually make it grow from there, which was because he did the pilot, the first episode, and then we just took it from there and went even a little different. Alan Cadillo and I did, and Sid, the DP, and David, really, I would always talk to him about what we were doing. We're going to do this. This is a new shot we haven't done on the show. And I'd be like, but it's sort of based in his world. So I used him as an inspiration for it, which is nice to know. Like when you're approaching a scene, and even as an actor or as a director, you're trying to find the heart of what that scene is. And then that answers all your questions. And so we had like that as a part of the heart of every scene was sort of David's cinematic universe. And so we'd use that to answer all the style questions.
Was he there on a daily basis, kind of making sure it was sort of like in line with what he imagined, or?
No, he turned it over to me as soon as he was done, and he came back a couple times in LA. But David is a madman, and a very talented madman, and he'll just like he'll go, give me a camera, and he'll just grab it. He'll want to, like, I operate sometimes when I want to be close to the actors, and I'll ask the permission of the operators, so I don't, insult anyone. But David's just like grab and go, and he goes right into the scene and starts doing it. So I would assume if he would to visit set, that would happen on whatever director is working. He'd get like, he just gets aggravated if he's not running it. So I think he stayed away out of courtesy to the rest of us. But we always called him and ran everything by him.
The other thing I remember is, I forget which series regular of Deputy I was talking to, but they said, as soon as we heard that Chris was directing the final 2 episodes of Deputy, we knew that it would go just fine, because he doesn't do a lot of extra takes. He comes super prepared. And I know filming that last episode in Malibu, we had a hard out at like 9 p.m.
That was insane.
And we only got like that second safety take, and then we moved right on.
Yeah. The owner of the house was literally standing there saying, I don't care, get out. I want you out. Get out. While we were rolling. And I was like, can you take him away from me so I at least concentrate a little bit? That was about the most cowboy I've shot since I did a short film. Like I haven't had an owner breathing down my neck. And it's hard because at most, when an owner is doing that, usually you can have locations comes up with $1,000 and quiets them down, but it's a Malibu mansion. So whatever your film money is isn't going to appease them.
Yeah.
And my last shot was the clothesline shot, where my character as the bad guy gets clotheslined. And we literally did one rehearsal, and then there was an A cam and a B cam shooting at the same time. And we're like, okay, run it.
Yeah.
And we got 2 takes.
And the stunt guy wanted to try this giant flip, which I knew wasn't going to work. And he goes, just do it. And I'm like, we get 1 take, I'll cut around it, which we did. But it was so insane. If you'd seen the first cut of it with the flip, it looked like probably she was the strongest person in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was a full 360, but we cut it out. So.
I see. You're still doing some short stuff too, or like some mini stuff here and there, or are you kind of like done with that world?
I did. I try and do music videos when I can. I did one last year for a British band called Fat White Family. That was, it was fun to work with junkies, You know, it's always nice. People who have to sleep in the middle of a take. But they're sufficiently dangerous and punk rock to make it fun. I liked how the video turned out. They kept worrying about how, like, we don't want it to look too good, man. It's gonna look fucking too good. And so I ran it between VHSs and then would like crinkle up the tape until we got it sufficiently, you know, broken down.
Wow.
And then added effects to it later and stuff, so it didn't look good. And I shot it on a digital Bolex myself with my 10-year-old son as my only crew member.
And
that was
how
you wanted this point. Good.
I was just gonna say, how do you make a choice to like what intrigues you about a certain project that you would say, all right, let's do it?
Well, I learned when I was doing for music videos, when I was doing I've been directing like a lot of music videos, and then I was doing these hip hop videos, and I'm like a kid from Saskatchewan in Canada. And so I'd go to these dance rehearsals and they'd be like, hey, how did that look? And I'd be like, I don't know, I guess it was fun. Let's shoot it or something. And then I was talking to Kevin Drew from Broken Social Scene, who's a friend of mine. And I was like, I don't like doing these videos. And he's like, have you ever said no? You know that you can actually say no to these things? And I'm like, wow. Like that should be an eye-opening moment. Not an eye-opening moment, but it was for me. And I started saying no to ones that I didn't think I could add anything to. And I then got Arcade Fire right after that. So from there, I just kept looking for the songs that I liked and something that I had an idea for, and it seemed to work out. So that I still do the same thing. Like the band, I did one for the band Off a couple of years ago. Keith Morris from the Circle Jerks band, and it was a lot of fun to do. You know, staging a fist fight between superheroes at Hollywood and Vine and having them like pee all over each other in front of children was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Would someone typically take a music video directing gig? Is it mostly because of the money, or is it more of a stepping stone, or I guess both?
Some people do it for money. Obviously, some people do it for a living, and I always put my fee back into it. And actually, a bunch of music video directors when I was younger came to me and they're like, "Stop donating your fee. Everyone expects that when we work with them now." So, I you know, when I do them now, generally people don't really pay for music videos anymore. Like I did a bunch for Vice, and Vice pays like $5,000 like for the budget. So the whole budget's $5,000. So
For the whole thing?
So yeah. So it's like barely enough to buy a permit, you know, for most places. So it's, people are all about DIY now and stuff, and I'll do it only if there's like some sort of budget. And like even my Arcade Fire video was only $13,000, and that went to like number 9 on MTV. We shot it all ourselves, like no crew, and so.
So there's no more of that $1 million Kanye West somewhere.
I'm sure there are. I just am not part of that world.
If you want the gaudy product placement of Beats by Dre or whatever, then you can direct $1 million.
That's right. Perfect. Absolutely.
I saw on your IMDb you directed multiple episodes of Pretty Little Liars.
Yes.
And that seemed like the outlier sort of from the general theme of TV shows you direct.
No, he did Kyle XY. It seemed like he did a bunch of like.
Yeah, I was at one point when it was called ABC Family, one of the executives came to me and she said, "It's like you're a part of the very fabric of this network." I was like, so I had to go home and take a hard look at myself in the mirror after that. Like, sort of meant as a compliment, I guess, but I started questioning everything about myself. And I'm really happy to have done those. And Pretty Little Liars was great because Dana Gonzalez was the director of photography. He won the Emmy last year, and he's won. He shoots all of the Fargo episodes. Very, very talented DP. And so I got to work with him, and I got to see that creativity isn't dead in television, and that it sort of inspired me to keep pushing the envelope on any show that I was on. And so every show you can learn something from, I think. But most of the shows I've been on, I've been able to push the envelope a little bit. And then, I mean, I've done a lot of kids stuff. So I did like CW, I would put on par with that as well. And I was sort of doing pilots and stuff for the CW and directing a lot. And I ran Vampire Diaries for a few years. So
I always wondered, working on like stuff like CW or whatever, do you feel like there are certain networks that are more heavily involved, or are they all pretty hands-on in the process of like controlling like your creativity and stuff?
They generally don't control the look as much. Sometimes you'll get notes on things, usually the same note. Network execs seem to give the same notes over and over again. Like, that's too dark. They seem to have things that they say, almost to check, like if you give notes for a living, you check a box. I said that note today, so I deserve a paycheck. Like, could you unpack that beat a little more? That's the note that I love the most. And but at that time when I was doing those shows, I wasn't as involved in the story stuff. I didn't learn till later that I should be on every call between the writers and the network and the studio, because that way I can know what's coming and what the feedback is on everything. In Vampire Diaries, I rarely did that. But then once I left that show, I started being involved in everything. And I don't weigh in. Sometimes I'll just listen because they might say a little snippet, well, we hated this thing, or we hate how this character is going, you know, and then it gives me like a little bit more fuel when I'm on set to go, okay, let's correct this a little more and bring it into the world that they want.
And do you have power, if needed, to change some of the writing if you see fit?
Depends on the show. I mean, I can't go and rewrite the script, but a lot of the times, like on Vampire Diaries, for instance, once the exec producer of the show, the showrunner, trusts you, sometimes they'll do things like Julie Plec would be like, almost like they would make jokes about how the stage directions were just polite suggestions for me. Because I could change it all, but they knew that I'd do something that they liked. So I don't do that. When I was just a director for hire on most shows, you tend not to do that because they get a little bit angry. They got a little angry with me like that on Orphan Black because I did my own thing on some of the stuff, and they didn't like that, so they didn't have me back. But
really, that show
turned out really well.
Yeah. That show's so. I've only seen clips, but it seems like they would like different.
It's just it very much. It was John and Graham's show, and they just, you know, John was busy on another episode, so I thought I could do that. But it was, you know, it's I get what happened, but it happened to me a bit on, you know, it happens with me with other directors who do it their own way on shows that I'm running, and I'm just like, why? Now we have to go and recut this or reshoot this, or, you know, so.
Interesting.
When you're a director for hire, can you kind of walk us through that process of like almost being like this new kid in school? What's like the initial steps of you coming into this show? It's been like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, it's tough, especially on shows that have been around for a while, because you're coming in at a disadvantage. Everyone's like, oh, what does this genius have to say? You know, that's sort of the attitude. Like, especially when you're younger, people are like, oh, great. First, like the joke is the only entry-level position on the set is the director. So it's a little bit of work. You have to be confident. The crew will test you. The actors will test you for sure. Like number 1, 2, and 3 on the call sheet will, like, middle of a take, will disagree with everything you're saying in front of the whole crew just to see how you react. And I've had some real, you know, tense moments that way where you start to lose confidence, and then people smell blood, and they, you know, it takes a while to learn exactly how to stay confident. And, you know, my idea has always been the best idea wins. So if somebody has a different idea and I like it, I'll get credit for it anyway. So we might as well try it. No, I'm just, but the, you know, the going in and being personable, knowing that you're not always right. Being a human being, I think, really helps. I've had some shows like Blood and Oil was one I did with Don Johnson, and I was lucky enough to be sitting next to Taylor Kitsch on the plane to go out to Salt Lake City to shoot this, and he and I hit it off talking about cameras because he collects Leicas.
Who is Taylor Kitsch?
Taylor Kitsch from Friday Night Lights and Waco.
He's been in a
yeah. You know his face. Yeah.
So he called ahead to Chase Crawford, who was on the show, and said, "Oh, I sat next to this really cool guy who's directing your next episode." So it was like, you know, phew, you have someone vouching for you, then it takes some of the heat off.
Yeah. I guess you kind of answered it sort of, but I guess if there is that sort of, I don't know, not altercation, but something where somebody's testing you, especially one of the name actors on the set, let's say they're a big star, what's the best way to handle that situation? Like, you don't want to, I guess. I'm of the mind that everyone on set is replaceable except for the people who are on camera. So when you realize your place in the pecking order, you have to bend a little bit. But the great thing is, usually if somebody's going to challenge you like that and be really childish about it, you've been a parent, you know how to, you know, make your idea seem like their idea and make them happy. So, and I'm never going to fight with someone on set. Life's too short. And it's for what? A TV show in one shot? You know, it's not,
you know, if there was a feature that I've been living with for, you know, 10 years and slaving to get it made, and I wrote it, and suddenly someone just wanted to change a big story point in the middle of a take, I'd probably be a little bit more upset.
Do you have a project like maybe Designated Survivor that you did fight for? I just know because you were EP on that. Is that an example of one of those?
Designated Survivor, yeah, I started as just a director on that show, and it was a complete and utter mess. Like, they had booked me for 2 episodes, and the day before I was supposed to travel, I called them, and I was like, so when's my flight tomorrow? And they were like, oh, did nobody call you? We pushed your date a month, and it's only 1 episode now. And so they still have to pay me for 2, but I don't know how they just were bleeding money. So I came onto that show and got along with Kiefer, and Kiefer is such a particular actor, and if you're in his world and you have the same style as him, then it's much easier going. But I watched directors who just had different ideas, and Kiefer is one of those actors, very, very smart. So he will, if he loses faith in you, he'll just be like, I'm over here, I'll come here, have her come in that door, she'll walk here, put the camera over there, you know, because he's directed a bunch too. Mm-hmm. So I've watched him just take over the set because he kind of has had to a lot in his career. And I've worked with a lot of actors like that if they lose faith in the director, like Don Johnson, there's a rumor, he didn't do it with me because we got along pretty well, but he only called TV directors, I think he only called them Bob. He'd only call every TV director Bob. What are we shooting here, Bob? Male, female. So I never wanted to be a Bob. I always wanted to make sure that, you know, you listen to people and you had an opinion, because at the end of the day, actors want to be watched, and they want someone who's actually invested in what they're doing, is giving them actual feedback, even the ones who pretend that they don't.
So how'd you become EP?
My first, on Designated,
yeah.
The EP, they liked my episode a lot, and then the next season, Fred Toy was leaving to go. He was the EP when I was there, and he's an amazing director, great guy, and he was leaving to go run Westworld. And so he suggested me, and then Kiefer suggested me separately. So that's sort of, yeah, so I ended up getting it that way. And then on Vampire Diaries, I directed an episode that they liked a lot, because I was lucky because I got the episode where it was the first time they were going back to the 1920s on the series. And so I got to change the whole look of the show. And Kevin Williamson wrote me a beautiful letter about how it looked and everything. And then they offered me the EP job. And from there, I got the pilot for the originals and then the pilot for Legacies. So.
That's really cool. How do you feel like you got on Kiefer's level? If you're saying he's obviously used to directing himself almost, when he was away, and you think?
I think I had an advantage in that I'm from Saskatchewan, where his grandfather was a big deal in Canada. He was a huge politician. Tommy Douglas was the premier of my province, and he invented sort of the Canadian version of our socialist medicine and everything. So he's sort of a hero in Canada. And Kiefer, I think, gravitates towards people from Saskatchewan because it's freezing cold, and he thinks we're, you know, rugged and sensible. So we hit it off that way. And then I think he tested me. He liked my ideas. He liked that I treated the stage directions as, you know, polite suggestions, and I'd go, let's, you know, get this on its feet and move through the whole building, as opposed to just being seated behind the desk, as it says right here. So he liked making things new. He respected that, I think.
How did your responsibilities change when you went to EP? Like, as far as like a day-to-day version of it, how did it change?
Yeah, it's on a show like that. It's I try to make, as a directing producer, I try to make sure I'm a part of budgeting. I'm there for blockings, and then I'm working with the next director, planning the next shoot. So it's really hectic. On Vampire Diaries, it ended up being like 22-hour days a lot of the time.
Oh my God.
That's the dream.
I don't do that anymore. But we don't shoot. I might hesitate against doing a night vampire show, like that's all nights in the future. But yeah, I mean, you're involved in everything, and you don't have to be, but you'll be playing catch up later. So it's a great position because you're actually helping create something, as opposed to just being hired to come in for a little while. But it's also pretty taxing.
For the type of director who, you know, obviously eventually wants to do big things like that, but right now is maybe just made a bunch of like low budget short films that they produce themselves, but wants to get hired? Like, do you have any words of wisdom for that guy?
If they've only done short films, if the short films look really good and are interesting looking, they might be able to get, 'cause there's so much shooting right now. I mean, not right now, obviously, but there was so much shooting. There's so many networks, streamers, everything. So there's always kind of a way in. It just depends on what kind of director you are. Sometimes I would suggest, you know, going after a Hulu show, or going after, even if you think that a kids show isn't for you, sometimes there's a bunch of kids shows that have great style to them. So there's that. I've worked with, LA has some great shadowing programs too, like Zetna Fuentes, who I think was nominated for an Emmy last year. She shadowed me on Pretty Little Liars, and she was very talented. She's the only, like, I've had a lot of shadows in my career, and maybe 2 that I thought were going to do anything. A lot of them are, you know, their parents are really high up in the industry or something, and then they're like, you know, these meetings are kind of boring. I'm going to come for when you're shooting. I'm like, the meetings are where it happens. This is where the actual filmmaking, we're just, you know, dotting the I's and crossing the T's on set. So, you know, I've had 2 that were good, and they both have gone on to do things. So I would suggest shadowing a little bit if you actually are serious and you're going to show up and do the work. If you can get in a good shadow program, that can help as well.
I didn't realize there were like programs for shadowing. Is it?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's, I mean, it depends. There's like minority shadow programs, obviously, that are working a lot now. I don't know exactly all of them. We've had, Warner Brothers has one.
I think Sony has one. I think
Sony,
there's like
yeah.
a fellowship or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like going further on that, like maybe when you were earlier on in your career, like now you obviously have a ton of connections, but if you get off a show and you have nothing, how do you rainmake?
No, I'm there. Every show I do, I always feel like, well, I've had a good run. I guess I'm going to go back to cooking. So you just kind of have to keep, I always feel like the meeting that I'm having isn't for the thing that I'm having it for. It's for 2 things from now, you know, like a year from now, they'll remember they met with me. Oh, he's that guy. We could put him here. So I think having meetings and keeping communication open with people. I had a really hard time creating long-term communication with different people in the industry, because I'd have the meeting and then just be nervous to write them or say thank you, or, you know, keep any sort of communication going. But now I'm a little bit better at that. So I'd say if you have connections, check in with them, you know, send them emails about things that you're interested in, send them projects you're interested in, because so many people are looking for projects right now because there's so much, you know, airway to fill.
And I know, obviously, when you're directing an episode, you often, many times, of course, the director will be the one that's looking at the guest actors coming on the episode. So, for example, like Austin, when he was working on Deputy, is there certain things you look for in the audition, things that might stand out to you or anything like that?
If somebody nails the role exactly as I imagined it, I love that. But sometimes I really gravitate towards someone who completely turns the role on its ear. And I hadn't thought of it that way. It's a dangerous thing as an actor to do, I think. But when it's worked, it's really worked. And I've, you know, instantly been like, yeah, we should do it like that. We had the wrong idea. That person had the right idea. So sometimes, you know, and you can work with, if you have a good casting director and you have a good communication with them, sometimes they can give you a heads up about how to turn it a bit. But making sure you have a great relationship with a casting director or casting directors is important as well.
Has there ever been an actor that you really liked, but maybe the network was like, no, we're really feeling this other person? Or how does that?
All the time.
All the time.
All the time. Yeah. You know, I had, we had this role, the one that comes to mind is we had this role for a mess cook at a military base in Afghanistan on Designated Survivor. And what's his name? The actor's name from The Office.
Steve Carell.
No, yeah, the guy who played Kevin.
Stanley.
Oh,
Kevin
Malone.
Yeah.
Brian something.
Yeah, and so he read for that. He was great. It was not him, and I love him so much, and it was perfect. But the feedback you get every time for people of that level is no, it's Kevin from The Office. Everyone will say there's Kevin from The Office. So it's, if you nail a role sometimes too, you're that for good, is what it seems like in this town, until people sort of forget about it.
Right. And every time I see that actor in a movie, even if he kills it, automatically think of The Office, because he was so good in The Office.
Yeah, exactly.
What about John Krasinski? I mean, he's gone on to do a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, but he had to get ripped though.
That's true. He changed his whole like basically.
Yeah. Like for my episode / your episode of Deputy, like we had Alexis Wren hired on, and I believe from talking to her, and she was great, and this is one of her first acting roles, and I believe she said that they were specifically looking for somebody with a large following to fill that role.
Oh yeah, that's the world we live in now. We get like, I worked for Hulu quite a bit. I did Freakish, that show for Hulu, and another one called The Unsettling, 2 sort of horror series there. And through Awesomeness TV, one of their mandates at the time, I don't think it is anymore, was to work with influencers. So, and that's a double-edged sword, because some influencers are amazing because they're on camera all the time, so they're natural and they're loose, and they just take a little bit of direction to bring them, from here, from YouTube, like, hey guys, down to like television, natural acting. And but some of them, for some reason, it's like, I had one kid, I won't say his name, but he just froze as soon as he was totally natural, hanging out, goofing around, and he's in tons of videos on YouTube, millions of people watch him. And then as soon as we roll, just sweat just starts pouring down his face, and it's like he forgets how to speak English. I had to almost phonetically read him his lines off camera. So it depends. Alexis was great. She, it took a while for her to sort of realize the tone of television, because I think even in acting classes and things like that, you don't realize how quiet you can be and how small you can be, and how you don't have to do a lot with your face to convey an emotion. So it took her a while, but once she got it, she really did a great job.
And how common is that? Would you say like, hey, one episode of a season, you want that, a guest star with a bunch of followers, or once an episode?
For the Awesomeness stuff, they wanted like, number 4 and 5 had to be influencers. But we got Liza Koshy, who was great, and she can do anything. She can. And then we had Megan Ranks, and she was, she gets hundreds of thousands of dollars for Instagram posts and stuff. So she brought a lot, and they bring their fans. That's the great thing. A lot of people who are big on television have huge following. They can go do a movie and like 2 people follow them there. But for some reason, the YouTubers and stuff, whatever platform they move to, people tend to follow a little bit. So they ended up, I don't know that the age of the influencer is going to last that much longer, but right now it seems that every once in a while on network shows, they're interested in throwing an influencer in just to drag some different viewers over.
And I actually just saw an article that Hollywood Reporter just dropped that a AI robot is now the lead of a new sci-fi film, $70 million.
And they've got a CAA agent and stuff.
Yeah. Thoughts on
so dumb.
AI robots?
That a Black Mirror has to end soon, because I'm bored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on using a robot for a movie or TV show?
I've worked with a lot of actors that I think I'd love to replace with a robot, but no, I don't know. I mean, CG stuff is difficult, and then you have I love watching the behind the scenes of the people that they're actually putting the CG face on. Like I don't know if you've watched any of the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff, when he's sitting there playing the raccoon in the green suit, it's just hilarious.
Yeah. Bringing it to today in Hollywood, have productions from your side of the pond started? Have you started seeing more offers or potential projects?
I talked to my agent a couple days ago, and he said he hasn't had an inquiry for a director in 2 months. So I think they're spending a lot of time thinking about how they'll reopen. And then some states are reopening. All the states where they're reopening, though, seem to be having spikes in coronavirus, because people keep going and having, 2,000 person lake boat parties. So I don't know how fast it's going to reopen. If we can get it under control. I mean, the EU is not allowing Americans to travel there anymore because America doesn't have it under control. So I think that's a first. We're being looped in with parts of China that don't have an edition. So I don't know how fast it's going to open. I hope it opens. We're doing a lot of Zoom pitching and things like that. And people seem to be still buying and wanting to do that. So that's what we're spending our time. A lot of people are spending their time doing.
Like stuff that you've written?
Yeah, stuff I've co-written. I've got like 7 projects. I'm trying to, I've kind of used this time because when you're EP, it's hard to start going and being creative on your own stuff. My brain can't. I don't have those compartments as easily laid out. So now that I've had time off, I've been able to take all the things that I was brewing and sort of bring them up to the front, and it's been pretty productive.
Are you mainly interested in TV? Like, are those the stuff you're writing?
Yeah, I've got a couple features that we're working on, a couple horror and thriller things, and then a lot of TV. Sort of the path of least resistance, which is someone advised me of that early in my career, and it seems to have worked.
What's the a strategy for pitching?
Don't let me lead it, obviously. Usually the writer will lead it, and I'll give sort of an intro of how it's going to look, how the idea came to me, how I developed it, how I brought the writer on, and then the writer will take over and give the overall sale, and then we answer questions at the end usually.
And no slideshow component or anything?
In person we do, but on Zoom I haven't. Usually we'll send like a document to get them interested, and it has some usually has some visual elements to it.
Interesting.
Yeah, when I was working with, I had a series with Awesomeness that we went out with, a horror series, and they did a big visual presentation that I had nothing to do with. It was very spooky and it was well done, but I don't have time for that. So.
What are some of your favorite movies? That kind of influence. You said you worked in a video store, so it wasn't Blockbuster.
Oh yeah. I love 80s horror stuff, and then I love The Big Sleep. I watch everything. What have I been watching lately? I showed my son The Cabin in the Woods, which he'd never seen. I'm lucky because our eldest son is a horror fanatic, so we get to watch a lot of stuff together.
We just had the blonde woman, Anna Hutchison, on the podcast. She was our last guest.
Oh, nice. Amazing.
And we worked with her on a film, Austin and I, a feature.
Yeah.
Which one?
It was originally called Splitting Image, but once Lifetime bought it, they changed it to Married to a Murderer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Way to give
right after a very first lady Christmas. I'm like,
exactly.
Yeah, Johnny, Lifetime gave away like the ending by changing the name to Married to a Murderer.
Yeah, I did a Lifetime movie. It was supposed to be a series, and then they turned it into a movie, and it has no ending because it was supposed to be a series. So absolutely, they thought like just cutting to the pull away would answer all the questions, and like anyway.
What was it called?
It was called Sea Change. It was a New York Times bestseller. It was when the woman who ran MTV took over. They wanted to try and do something CW like, and so it was like Vampire Diaries, but sort of about sea monsters. So it was like Creature from the Black Lagoon, but Vampire Diaries like. So it was a lot of fun. They let me shoot it the way I wanted. I'm proud of how it looks, but it was at the end it tested really well. I think it's one of the best tested things they'd done in Vegas or whatever. And then but every single person guessed that it was on Netflix, so they thought it was too off-brand.
You mean everybody thought it was too good?
Yeah, maybe. And then they it was kind of a blessing in some ways because we had to shoot in Nova Scotia in Canada, and it takes place in the summer. The whole thing is like a rich and poor in this island community, and there's maybe 3 months where it's warm there. So I don't know how to shoot like 16 episodes or whatever in 3 months. It would have been hell.
So I see you're working on a new project called Jimbo, I believe.
Jimbo, no, that's old. I don't know why that's on there.
It just barely popped up or something.
Yeah. No. I've been. I'm working on a thing called Goat about a YouTuber who gets kicked off YouTube. He's a horror influencer, and he goes on a killing spree on the kids who got him kicked off. And then we're working on a series, kind of a gritty modern Lone Ranger, where it's about a Texas Ranger who goes after a serial killer. So working on things like that.
Is that a series? The Gritty Lone Ranger?
Yeah, it's a series.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have networks in mind that you want to see these on, or are you open to whoever picks it up?
I don't think, after working with Fox recently, I have a really good idea of what they want. I don't think any of the stuff works for Fox, obviously, but I love working with them. But it was, network stuff is a totally different genre in some ways. And I think these are more, the stuff I'm working on is more streaming, Netflix, HBO, if we can, obviously.
Cool.
I know it kind of worked out for you with the feature Clutch, but do you still encourage people that want to get more exposure to do the film festival circuit?
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially like you look at Fantasia, even the online festivals. Like look at the guy who made Lights Out, made the little short. He got $10 million to make a movie off a 30-second short. So because of streaming and everything now, you don't have to do the film festivals. You don't have to, but I mean, that's one way to do it. But especially genre stuff, if you have something that really is a new idea and you do it in a visual way that no one's seen, which is difficult, you can jump right from that into a movie. That's what I've witnessed.
Nice.
And in our final 5-10 minutes, I have a few more questions, but we get this one from our audience a lot. Like if you're an actor on set at like a co-star or a guest star level, so not the series regulars that you would deal with and have a lot of rapport with, but if you're just coming in for a day or a few days, do you welcome like actors that 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line, keep in touch with you and just like update, like, hey, just worked on this project?
Absolutely. I do like that. And I've kept in contact with some of my good friends were guests on shows that I worked on. So they keep in touch. And so, even on Deputy, the guy who played the LAPD chief, he keeps in contact with me in a great way, checks in with me. He asks me for references sometimes because he knows I really liked his performance. And so I'll send a note if I know the person and say,
nice.
This guy's great and he does well on set. So I don't think it's a bad thing to keep in contact. You're not bothering people. If someone actually likes your performance and is happy with what you did and you can tell, then they'll happily help you get other stuff for the most part, I think.
Yeah.
I guess the worst thing is that they just don't respond, and then you can take a hint.
Yeah. Then you know that person's a dick and you can
So what's the best way to open it? Hey man, do you want to hang out, or what do we do?
Yeah, right.
Not to hang out, but if there's something you really want, then it's like, I've had actors who are like, I'm up to this role with this producer who I know you've worked with. Would you mind giving them a heads up that if you like my performance, or whatever, and I'll just send a quick note.
Cool.
Or I'll do that with directors of photography, grips, even PAs, if I've liked how they've worked and I've gotten along with them.
I wanted to ask you real fast about Containment. I did a small co-star on that show years ago.
Oh, cool.
Wondering, I was kind of surprised that the show ended up just being that one season, but
yeah.
Did you enjoy working on that show? What was your experience like on that?
I loved it. It was great. It was, Julie Pleck and I worked together since Kyle XY, and she's one of my favorites.
And you directed it, Chris?
Yeah. I think I directed 2 episodes of that. It was a lot of fun, and I thought it was going to get more seasons as well. I think it would now, obviously, because it's kind of about what we're going through.
Very timely. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the CW just has a hard time selling apocalypse stuff. Like, I think that there wasn't enough of it wasn't sexy enough because it was pretty down. I did some of the most revolting things, like someone just throwing up blood into the air and she's dying of this virus, and it was pretty revolting. So I could see people teenagers tuning into the CW and just being like, what is this?
We're like, where are the vampires?
Yeah, exactly.
Love it, man. That's great.
All right, team. Final question. Chris, where can our audience find you?
I guess Instagram. I'm on Instagram. Just my name, Chris Grismer. And I have a website, chrisgrismerdirector.com. So I'm on there if you want to get in contact.
All right. Nice. Awesome. Dude, thank you for coming on. I learned a lot. It was awesome.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, guys.
Yeah.
I appreciate your time. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, thanks, guys. I'll talk to you soon.